You're listening to Bigfoot Society podcast, hosted by our captain, Jeremiah Byron, where it's all Bigfoot all the time. Have you ever had the urge to do more, to be more? Now you can by joining Bigfoot Society on the Patreon. Get ad-free episodes and even member-only episodes. Take part in movie night and even live video chats. Interact behind the scenes with Jeremiah and other Patreon members like me, Leia. The powerful podcast goes on, and you may contribute a verse in our Patreon community. Carpe diem. Seize the day, Bigfooters, and make your lives extraordinary.
Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Chris today. He's a listener that reached out with some very interesting things that happened to him down in Texas. But it's a pleasure to have you on the show today, Chris. How's it going?
Good.
We were talking a little bit about your encounter beforehand. It's going to be a very interesting one, and it's in a real interesting area. But Chris, I'm going to say go ahead and take us what we need to know about this area and what happened to you that day.
Grew up on a farm on the backside of what a lot of people call Lake Wright Patman. I'll probably refer to it as Lake Texarkana because that's what most of the locals call it. But if you look on a map, it's Lake Wright Patman, northeast Texas, outside of Texarkana. I was out checking the cows, and we had a bull out, and he was out on the backside of our place. Well, we had an 8-acre pond, and the bull was out fighting with the neighbor's bull in the back. So I ran to the house to get a horse. And as I'm running back, I had to jump over. We had what was called a spillway, and jumped over the spillway. Well, the dam of the lake is U-shaped, and the water was about 8-9 foot from the top of the dam. Well, I was really fast, and I loved cutting the corner down kind of close to the water, and then you would come up on top of the dam. And as I jumped or come up on top of the dam, I made the curve, so now I'm on the dam, and I looked down, and as the spillway come around the creek that flowed into Lake Texarkana, this is a pretty heavily wooded area, and the sunlight was the gap in the trees was perfect for this beam of sun to shine down on that spot, and boom, there was this big object there, and it wasn't brown, it was more of a reddish brown than darker brown. But right as I made the curve, I looked down and saw it. Well, there's big oak trees that's on the dam. This pond was built in like 1890 something. And I saw it, and then I hit one of those roots, and I kind of stumbled. And then when I kind of caught my balance, I looked up, and what was really cool, this creek had been flowing since, 1890. And above the ground, it's probably about 3 to 4 foot to the bottom of the creek. Now, this is late summer in about 1987, 88, and it gets real dry. And that creek pretty much dries up except where the holes in the creek is. And the water's usually, let's just say, about a foot deep. Well, there's big carp that you can catch in these holes. When I say big, they're probably 3, 4, 5, some of them 6, 8 pounds. And I looked over there, saw it after I hit the root, caught my balance again and looked. Well, that thing, when I looked back, it basically stood up and in one step took his left foot, stepped up onto the ground and in one step just climbed up out of the creek. Well, right beside the creek is a bunch of bushes and briars and all that kind of stuff. And instantly he was gone. I had to look back down to find the next route. And that was pretty much the main gist of it.
Man, that must have been a wild few seconds for sure. Were you able to get any? I mean, it's such a quick thing, but were you able to catch any details of the face of the creature at all?
I was looking at it straight from the side, no face, no nothing. And you always hear, he was 8 to 9, 10 foot tall. I don't think he was that tall. I think this one was closer to 6 foot tall. But the thing that shocked me was in one step, he just stuck his foot up on the ground and stepped up out of it. And that had to be at least 3.5, 4 foot tall. There's no way I'm 6'1", and to climb out of that creek, because again, me and my brother, this is the 80s. There wasn't internet and all the 400 channels. We just grew up on a farm. We'd fish, go shoot water moccasins and all that out of that creek. And he didn't jump up out of it. He just stuck one foot and then climbed out. And that was the thing that I kind of caught my eye a whole lot, was in just one step, it stepped up and climbed out. And the color, because it was more red than it was brown or dark brown or anything. And the way the sun was shining straight through the trees was, if y'all, I know most of y'all been in the woods and the sun's up high, it's more like beams of light coming down to the bottom of the deal. And it perfectly standing right in there. Of course, it's the creek bed, so you don't have a whole lot of coverage over it. But it was probably, couldn't have been 20, 25 yards away. I mean, it was just right there, if that far. But coming up over that onto the dam, boom, I saw it and was like, oh, what is that? Because we're less than a mile from Lake Texarkana or Wright Patman. And it's just easement land, all the way thick, trees, brush, all the way to the lake, because Lake Texarkana is not real deep at all. Average depth is probably 6 foot. So when it floods all the way up into our farm. Is actually, most of it is easement land, and the lake will back up into the pond through the creek and around. But back then you didn't have a whole lot of Bigfoot shows and TV and the internet and the BFRO and shows, podcasts like y'all's. And I guess what In Search Of was about the only Bigfoot you really had saw. And we're only maybe, as the crow flies, 20 miles from Falk, Arkansas, where that Bigfoot was saw.
The Boggy Creek Monster.
The Boggy Creek Monster, and it's just straight woods, swamp, all the way from Texarkana down there. And actually, they did a Finding Bigfoot show episode that was on the other side of Lake Texarkana from where I'm at, which is not far at all from what you could tell. It looked like they filmed out of Atlanta State Park, which is just the side. And I don't know where they actually filmed, because they were in the woods. And of course, Lake Texarkana is all the same looking, no matter where you're at.
I am going to say, just so people don't come after me, it's also called the Falk Monster too. Just so that I don't get just totally demolished in the comments for saying that. But going back to your sighting for a minute, so you had that side view just for a very short time. Did you notice any details, like maybe the shape of the head or length of the arms at all?
No, not really, because as I come up onto the dam, and he couldn't have heard me. I mean, it couldn't hurt me. It was perfect for sneaking up on something, because I'm down kind of by the pond and then just run up onto the dam. And I saw it, and about that time's when I stumbled over the oak. And again, those oak roots stood up. They were anywhere 2, 3, 4, 5 inches tall out of the dam because, of course, the trees were huge and over the years of erosion and all that. And when I saw it, I didn't turn my head. I just saw I kept my eyes on it and then hit the roots. Well, then I stumbled and then looked back up as soon as I caught my balance. And all I noticed was it stood up, put one foot up on the ground, and then I had to look back at the ground to find the next set of roots. It was kind of more of like an obstacle course kind of a deal when you ran across the dam, because there's a whole bunch of big oak trees through there with all the root systems. And these oak trees, I mean, you couldn't even wrap your arms around them. You know, they're that big because they're that old. But what caught my eye was the color, and then the way it just stepped up onto the ground. And again, I had to look back down and it was gone. And I had to go get the horse anyway to go get the bull in, because they were back there fighting.
So you'd seen it put its foot up on the top side of the bank. Did you actually see the foot make contact with the ground at that time?
Not as in just totally looking at the foot. It was more of just, wow, I can't believe that just did it.
Right.
Because, again, I'm not really thinking Bigfoot. I'm thinking, what is that thing? And then how in the world did that get in one step, just climb up like he did? I mean, literally like just stepping on a step and going up. And then I'm back looking for the roots to keep running. The dam is only about, you couldn't really drive a pickup truck on it. I mean, you could barely, but you would be a little on the scared side about falling off the dam, because the dam on the side of the creek is probably 15 foot up from the ground. On the back side of the dam is probably about 15 foot. And then maybe 20 yards, probably not even 20 yards, is the creek, and that's where it was. So I just ran up the hill, or ran up the dam, boom, there it was. Tripped, caught my balance, looked back at it, it stepped up, took another couple steps, and I'm back into the roots, and then it was gone.
Right.
And didn't really think much about it being Bigfoot until, kind of years later. I knew it wasn't a person at all. There's no way it could have been a person. Where we were at, it's just located. And we're less than a mile. If anybody knows kind of the bridge on the backside of Lake Texarkana, and that's what it's called, the locals call it the bridge. And that's where we were at. And it's just miles and miles of just woods all back through there.
So it sounds like after this happened, you didn't really run home and tell your parents, hey, I saw a Bigfoot. Like that really didn't happen, I'm guessing.
No, they wasn't even home. This is the 80s.
Yeah, that's true. Right.
And this was the farm. And my big worry was going and getting the bull back in, because they'd started fighting again. And they were tearing up fences and cutting each other up and beating each other up. These are big Simmental bulls. And that was my main concern, was getting the bull back in.
That makes sense. Did you also have horses on that farm as well?
Yes, some chickens, kind of, but they were by the house. You would hear, and again, y'all got to remember, this is the 80s. You don't have all of the technology and all that listening, but there was panthers, bobcat out that area, because the game warden, whenever there was a panther that would come through our neck of the woods, and of course we ran anywhere 40 to 60 head of mama cows. And when the panther would come back, he'd always tell us, and we would kind of keep the cows close to the house, because it's 88 acres and half of it's woods, thick woods. So we would keep them up there, but you'd be sitting outside at night and you would hear different screams and hollers and loud noises, but you heard boats at the lake. We were close enough to the lake, you'd hear boats out there, vehicles passing, all that kind of stuff. So you never you'd never heard of Bigfoot holler like you do now on all these shows and podcasts and all that.
Did anything ever weird happen to your horses that were on the farm?
Not the horses. We had wild dogs. People would take their dogs down to the lake and drop them off, and they would run back. And since we were the first house with cows and horses and chickens and everything like that, they would try to take up residence. And through the years, we would have it was usually a cow would lay down and throw a baby calf premature from the wild dogs chasing them. But nothing, out of the normal. It's farm. Everything's kind of normal on a farm. Gotcha.
Just double check. Sometimes people with farm and horses will, report, their horse's hair being braided or weird things like that. So just double checking on that. Did people, any neighbors or any people that you knew around the lake ever report having any interactions with creatures like Bigfoot as well, or?
No, it's something that I never really talked about until, the last 10 years, especially now with TikTok, all the videos from deer cams and all that. Bigfoot's kind of become popular, I guess. But I've never really said anything besides my wife and my kids and maybe a couple of close friends. And, they're always like, was he drunk? Was he smoking something? That kind of deal. I'm like, no, I saw it. I'm telling y'all, I saw it.
Thinking back to that day, do you remember what the sounds were like around that area that you were in, or were there any weird smells or anything like that?
No, I was a little probably far away for a smell. And again, I'm running. My only concern is trying to catch a horse, get it saddled up, one of the horses, whichever one you could catch, get it saddled up, grab the rope and head back around there and get the bull in and then fix the fence and all that kind of mess. Because the person behind us, they probably had 60 to 80 acres also. And here they have 40 to 50 head of cows like we did. And the last thing you want is the cows to get out. So your main focus is get the cows back and get the bull back in and fix the fence. Back then, Bigfoot wasn't a big thing. Sure. Nobody really knew Bigfoot. And after it vanished and I made the next curve, I was like, I think I just saw a Bigfoot.
Are there reports of any other weird things in this area besides Bigfoot? Sometimes people also have Dogman in the same areas, or?
No, I've never heard anything.
Gotcha.
Back about 2000, I went on the BFRO website and was just looking around, and there's quite a few reports just to the BFRO in my general location. And we're not that far from Jefferson. I think Jefferson or Marshall's where they have was it Northeast Texas or East Texas Bigfoot meeting?
Yep.
And I didn't Finding Bigfoot also do another episode around Linden or Marshall, somewhere along through there too?
Yeah, I am sure that they did. There's so much going on in that side of Texas. I wouldn't be surprised. I need to do another watch of that show. It's been a while for me, but I wouldn't be surprised. Listeners know. I'm sure someone knows. You can put that in the comments for sure.
But I got to see him twice for just a second, and then just a little longer than a second. But it's a vision that's kind of etched into your brain. Like everybody says, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And it was, wow, what is that? And then hit the roots, stumble, look up, and it's like, I can't believe that thing just stood up in 1 foot and climbed up over it. But now you go back and think, he was in there catching those carp out of that hole. Because we'd get on one side of the hole, and the creek had multiple deeper holes in it, whereas when the water would go down kind of late in the year, Northeast Texas gets no rain. Like we ain't had rain in 2 months, I think. That creek would dry up. And the only basic water would be in those holes, so it would be easy to catch those big carp. You know, and that's a free meal to them, and a good sized meal. Some of them are, you know, 2, 3, 4 pounds.
There was a report I took. Let me think real quick. Yeah, there was a report I took at the Iowa State Fair, and it was actually the report. The person had said that there was a Bigfoot. This was about southeast of Des Moines, and they were also seen fishing for carp as well. That's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because it's a good sized fish, and definitely give them a fair amount to eat, which would be good.
And most of when I say these holes, you know, during the summer they would almost dry up. You're talking less than 1.5 feet, 2 foot of water, and these holes might only be 6 foot long, maybe. You know, it's not like they're big holes or anything. The holes ain't that big, because what me and either my brother or buddies would come over, because if you have the farm, everybody comes over and works cows or hauls hay, you know, all that kind of stuff. And we all loved to bass fish at that time, but you could get down there on one end and just kind of walk towards the other end, and you would see them, and you just shove them up out to where there was no water. You just reach down and catch them, and here you've got a big fish.
Mm. If you had the opportunity, would you want to see what you saw again?
Oh yeah, I've always. And I travel for a living, mainly, I don't know, about 100 miles north of the coast of Louisiana, and then I've got a big chunk of northeast Texas. So I'm on the road all day long, and you're always looking down pipelines and high lines and all that, just hoping to see. And actually, I go this morning, I went straight through Falcon on Interstate 49. The whole time you're driving, you know, you're looking down both sides looking for it.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Yeah. If I was able to drive down there, I would have, I'd have the dash cam ready, and who knows?
And that's after, you know, you get older and you start hearing all about the Bigfoot on TV and now podcast and all that. It's like growing up there for all those years, and how 20, 25 acres was thick woods. How many times did I walk right past one that wasn't far? Because yes, you would smell dead stuff, and you just take it as something dead. You kind of go and look and make sure it's not a cow or a calf, because the horses mainly stayed up closer to the house. You know, wondering how many times maybe I did smell one, and you know, you didn't know anything about Bigfoot and smells back then.
Is there also a military base in that area as well?
It's actually from the farm, it's actually about 2 miles.
Oh, wow.
The back side of it, yeah. Yeah, you got Red River Army Depot. Long Star Army Ammunition Plant was right beside it, and it's all right there. It's a huge complex.
I've always thought it's interesting when you have stuff like this happen near military base areas, but it will be interesting to see if anyone reaches out that has had things also happen in that area.
And I deer hunted on the west end of Red River Army Depot. Some of it is high fenced, but a lot of it is just a barbed wire fence.
Interesting. Let's definitely, you know, as we were talking before the show started, there's been multiple people that have reached out recently about this particular lake and things that have been seen around it. So we'll see if that trend continues. But
yeah, because you're not far, you know, from Jefferson all the way up to Broken Bow, Oklahoma, and it's just pretty much a straight path right through that whole area. And years ago, they were kind of thinking they would come down to your Jefferson, Linden type area and into Louisiana, and that's where they would have the babies, and then they would come down there for winter and then go up into Oklahoma for the summer because it's a little cooler up there in the mountains.
Man, such an interesting area. I mean, you could literally have a mini Bigfoot adventure down there. Go to that lake, check out Sulphur River, check out Mercer Bayou, go over to the Falk Monster Mart, all that good stuff. Be one crazy trip for sure.
And that's actually, I took my kids when they were, I don't know, 10, 8, somewhere along through there. And we were going through there. I said, hey, y'all, I got to take y'all here. Because I'd always watched the Finding Bigfoot, and usually they would sit and kind of watch it with me. And took them over and got to see the footprints and the pictures and some of the newspaper articles and all. That's a really cool place. And you don't think it's got that much in it. And that's when I kind of said, hey, I've seen one of them. And they were like, no. And I was like, yeah, I saw it on the farm.
There you go. Oh, man, Chris. This has been a fun chat. Thank you for sharing what happened that day. That was extremely interesting. I'm just happy to talk to you tonight. I know we were trying to get things together, and we got it together today at the last minute. But anyone else who's listening that's had stuff happen in this area, please feel free to reach out as well. You can email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com, or you can put something in the comments as well. But email is the best way for me to see stuff. So
glad I finally got it out there. I need to tell some more people and like even put it on like the BFRO so that way it's documented, because this is the first time I've ever really told anybody about it. But as you get older, you just kind of want to get it out there. And I don't know if you have kind of like a database system also where you keep up with the locations, but that's where it's at.
I don't yet, but I would recommend, if you get a few minutes, you can always, there's BFRO, there's a Bigfoot mapping project, but it is good to have it in some area like that just for, future generations to look at, and then starts to make a picture once you're able to see all the reports in the same area. So yeah, that would be cool if you could do that.
The Bigfoot mapping, is that like Bigfoot mapping? Or
it's bigfootmap.com. What he does is it's actually really cool. So he takes the data from BFRO, but then he takes it from other places as well, and then he gets reports his just put into his website. But he uses the data and he does heat maps of the entire U.S. so you can see, going off of the reports, which parts of each state are more, real likely probably to have Bigfoot encounters. And it's a really cool thing to check out. So,
and the season, the time of the year.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And definitely keep me in the loop if anything else happens across your plate in the future down there.
Will do.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. If you've had any encounters in Oregon, which I'm sure there's probably a few of you out there, please feel free to reach out immediately. You can use email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.